Where is it? It's over there. It's one of the most iconic album covers of all time, but even more importantly than just the artwork, it is one of the most influential albums of all time. Today I want to run through a handful of bands that are definitely influenced by the Velvet Underground. They're hanging out in a long shadow that the band created in the mid 1960s in New York. Chiefly Lou Reed, Sterling Morrison, John Cale, Moe Tucker. The incredible feel and the light touch of Moe Tucker. Just what the band needed to drive these songs along. And we'll get into it a little bit later. Her rendition of the song After Hours on the third self-titled album, a song that Lou wrote that he thought was a little too tender, a little too twee for Lou to sing. He gave it to Moe to sing, and that song alone spawned so many followers into the late 1970s, into the 80s, into the 90s, into the 2000s. One of the band's biggest early fans, who was handed a copy of their album shortly after it came out in London, was none other than David Jones, i.e. later David Bowie. He, if you listen to some of Bowie's albums, especially the earlier albums, what I'm thinking about right now is this incredible piece of work, Hunky Dory. Give Queen Bitch a listen on side 2 and tell me that is not totally derivative of that album over here, The Velvet Underground and Nico. This is a driving, gritty guitar drama, and the staccato guitar riffs, the light touch on the drums is totally reminiscent of that album. Later, Bowie would admit one of his most acclaimed albums, one of his most acclaimed songs, the title track from Heroes. Heroes is a dead lift from I'm Waiting for My Man. It has a very, very similar song structure, although it's slowed down a bit in the final version. That was very, very, very much composed and arranged in the style, totally influenced by Waiting for My Man. We all know that Bowie was such a fan that he went on to produce Lou's 1972 landmark Transformer album, and those two would come in and out of each other's orbits all the way until Lou Reed's death in 2013. While Velvet Underground and Nico have some gritty urban poetry, which is definitely what the song Heroin and Waiting for the Man is, this album shed a little bit of a different, softer light on the band. More of an Americana, a folksy feel to it. There were still some driving rock numbers on this album, but Lou tamed things down a little bit, and we got probably one of the prettiest songs ever composed and recorded in rock and roll, Pale Blue Eyes. That would go on and definitely influence tons of artists. I think it was Brian Eno that said, that album sold 30,000 copies initially in the mid 1960s, and the 30,000 people who purchased that album, they all went on to form their own band. Check out Roxy Music, early Roxy Music, and Brian Eno, and you will see definite influences as well. I'm just not going to show any albums, but count Roxy and Brian Eno in the camp following in the footsteps of the Velvet Underground. Where was I going? I was going to talk about After Hours and Mo Tucker. First of all, Mo Tucker, such a light touch, primarily a stand-up drummer, just lightly touching and playing tom-tom drums. Um, Definitely had the intensity when it was called on, but she also had the touch, the feel, the intuition to know just what that song might need. And on After Hours, we get her incredible, boyish sounding voice on After Hours. And if you go on and if you're a fan of Belle and Sebastian, Belle and Sebastian, If You're Feeling Sinister, a fine album. Belle and Sebastian, one of the most iconic, a combination of shoegaze mixed with twee. Let's say more leaning towards twee than shoegaze. This is a fine, fine band. Great album. Another band from Scotland. Interesting how that is. This band took equal measures of the softer, pastoral, gauzy rock combined with the elemental, guttural, staccato guitar rock especially from that title album, and then also elements of Loaded, the final album from 1970 from the Velvet Underground. I'm talking about the Jesus and Mary chain. This is a great album, Psycho Candy. Just listen to Just Like Honey. And you know what I loved was the use of that song in the Sofia Coppola film with Bill Murray. The title is escaping me now, but just an incredible song. A great kind of passage in that film when that song came over the soundtrack. Just Like Honey and the great rock and roll band Jesus and Mary chain, definitely influenced by the VU. One person who studied Lou Reed and watched Lou Reed, especially as he moved into his solo career in the early 70s, they passed in the same orbit in New York City. Tom Verlaine, R.I.P., and this band, Television, you listen to the guitar interlocking and the interplay between Richard Lloyd and Verlaine, and you have the best, if not better, of Sterling Morrison and Lou Reed's guitar interplay from the first VU album. Television were a little more of a melodic band. They also had a lot more extended guitar soloing, something that you're not going to find in the economy of the songs of the Velvet Underground, but Verlaine definitely was a close watcher of Lou Reed, and you can hear that in his music. Another New York band, can't get away without talking about Richard Hell, definitely influenced by Lou Reed. Actually part of the early lineup in Television. He was eventually left the band, and they got an incredible bass player for that debut album. But of course, Richard Hell went on to form Richard Hell and the Voivoids with the fantastic Robert Quine on lead guitar. Quine, of course, played on Lou Reed's The Blue Mask and a couple others to great effect. What an incredible guitar player, Robert Quine. He and Richard Lloyd would become the foil to Matthew Sweet's kind of sickly sweet, pardon the pun, melodies and finely crafted power pop songs. Those guys provided the crunch and the grit that really set Matthew Sweet's early solo albums apart in the early 1990s. Another indie band from the early 1980s, hailing from New Jersey. These guys absolutely echoed everything that the Velvet Underground ever did in all of their music and all of their albums. I am a particular fan of The Good Earth. Great, great, great song. Intricate guitar playing. Fuzzy, enough as far as having a little bit of grit. Very, very understated drumming. Stan Demeski, a great drummer who would later go on to join the band Luna. I'm going to talk about Dean Wareham in just a minute, but um, this is a fantastic standout album of the Feelies. Try and find any of the Feelies albums if you can, and you'll hear a direct correlation going back to the VU. Dean Wareham, a New Zealander by birth, moved to Boston with his family, a Harvard graduate, along with the two other people in this incredible band, Galaxy 500. This is the On Fire album. It was reissued several years ago. I think it's been repressed. Mastered by Kevin Gray. It sounds very, very good. Dean Wareham, definitely a close watcher, a studier of Lou Reed. Now, Dean has got a lot more melody in the songs, that in the soundscapes that he crafts, but you can definitely tell Galaxy 500, a short-lived band. Dean Wareham went on to form Luna. They're actually reformed again. They're touring again. I don't know about new music. Wareham just put out a solo album last year that I have not heard yet, but anything that Dean Wareham is involved in is worth listening to. He has some incredible guitar playing, understated guitar. Britta Phillips is his wife, who is now in the band in Luna with him. But he has the original, an early original guitar player with him still. And those guys interlock into some incredible, fantastic pop songs that Wareham composed. Look for their debut album, Luna Park. Bewitched is incredible as well. I'm on the hunt for all of the Luna albums. I don't have any. I've got them all on CD, but definitely would love to have them on vinyl. There is a box set. Shout out to Steve Carlson. He just showed that box set that he was lucky to get recently. I've got a Discogs tracker on that thing. I am watching for it. Last but not least, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that band from Athens, Georgia, heavily influenced by Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, Sterling Morrison, etc. And that is, of course, REM. REM filled out their early set list when they were just getting started with Velvet Underground songs. And you'll find two on this comp. Great album. There She Goes Again and Pale Blue Eyes. One of my favorite bands of all time, REM. You can definitely hear the influence, especially in the early run of albums on IRS. Little glare there, sorry everybody. That is the first album, of course, Murmur. And Chronic Town, you can definitely hear influences, wearing the influences on their sleeves, not only the Velvet Underground, but the Byrds, Dylan, the Ventures, etc. That has a lot to do with the deep knowledge that Peter Buck has. Worked in used record shops for years before REM became a thing. That is today's episode. I wanted to kind of highlight the incredible track record from all of these bands that were heavily influenced by the Velvet Underground. Rest in peace, Lou Reed. Rest in peace, Sterling Morrison. We still have John Cale and Mo Tucker around. R.I.P. Nico. That is just an iconic band and still influencing bands today as they are coming up and they're trying to make an impact. Check out the Lemon Twigs as an example for latter period influences that you'll be able to hear right here as we sit in 2023. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. This has been a fun episode. I'm Tim with the University of Vinyl. We'll see you soon.